So all of us on this panel are veterans. Our service could not have been any different, which is kind of the point. There is no one size fits all of service. There's so many jobs, there's so many specialties in the Air Force, in the Space Force, and so many different ways to serve. So our goal today is really just to share a little bit about our stories and sort of help you understand a little bit about the airmen and guardians that we all are here to support. So we'll start with Houston. Houston is a retired brigadier general. He served 30 years in the Air Force and retired 1 year ago as the Home Center commander, where he was responsible for the Air Force's ROTC and officer training programs. He served as an F-16 pilot, MQ-9 drone pilot, and commanded operational and combat units around the world. He's now a senior fellow at the Mitchell Institute.
Yay!
Next to him is Jen Reeves. Jen is a retired Air Force colonel and a senior resident fellow for space studies at the Mitchell Institute. Although she's a retired Air Force colonel, her entire career was in space. So she's kind of our Space Force representative on this panel. She says serving in the Air Force was like taking over the family business. Her core competency was in space operations, specifically space-based missile warning, and her last job was the Air Force's Chief of Program Integration, informally called the Chief of the Engine Room, and I will let her explain what that means.
Yes, right?
Those who know, know.
Whoa.
And then last but not least, we have Craig Duclos. Craig is a retired Chief Master Sergeant with 29 years of active duty service in the Air Force. His last assignment was Senior Enlisted Aide to the Chief of Staff of the Air Force. In fact, he served as a Senior Enlisted Aide to 3 different Chiefs of Staff of the Air Force. He's now the Protocol Manager for Events and Operations.
Awesome. That's a big job.
So unlike our panelists here today, I was never active duty. I was a traditional reservist, which means I served a week and a month and 2 weeks a year. I enlisted right before 9/11, and I was at tech school at Lackland Air Force Base when 9/11 happened. And like everybody who was serving in that time, it really changed the entire trajectory of my career. I never deployed in uniform, but once I came to AFA, I embedded both in Iraq and Afghanistan as a reporter for Air Force Magazine, now Air and Space Forces Magazine. So that's a little bit about me.
Yay, Amy!
All right, so I kind of set the tone a little bit, but if you could each kind of take a little bit more time and just kind of tell me about what you actually did in service. Houston, we'll start with you.
Okay. I started out as a young pup, aspiring fighter pilot, and I will just tell you that it was an absolute honor to be able to serve as a pilot for the first 20 years or so of my life. But I'll tell you, leading as a commander for the last 12 years or so of my career was the most rewarding aspect. We are supporting some very talented young folks out there, and I just want everyone to fully understand that we have some young, talented leaders out there, and whether they're still aspiring as cadets or whether they are actually active duty, they are doing some tremendous work defending our country. And when I was a wing commander at Holloman Air Force Base, that's when I learned how young our Air Force was. I learned that 1/3 of my overall force was first-term airmen, which means that was their first assignment in New Mexico. And so they were basically age 17 to 21 are making the mission happen. And that's at pretty much every Air Force base and Space Force base. But a lot of people don't realize how young our Air Force is of these people serving and just wanting to make a difference. Thanks.
Boots.
Same question?
Yeah, same to you.
Okay, so as Amy mentioned, my core competency is space operations. And from day one, I knew from from being in ROTC that I had bad eyesight. I would never get to fly planes. And it's a good thing, too, because I've been in a lot of planes, and I think I've thrown up in all of them. So space operations, it was for me, and it wasn't a consolation prize. This is what I wanted. So it was really cool. I prepped for it and like over prepared for it. Got a degree in engineering so I could be an operator kind of thing. And it was really awesome. It was so cool, very futuristic, even though the things that I was working on were actually kind of older, right? Very Cold War type things, but very exciting. I spent the first 10 years of my career in dark rooms with no windows and big screens, looking at dots on scopes, and it was pretty wonderful. I loved it. But what I will say is as I continued to serve, and almost 29 years, almost 3 decades, I agree with Houston that the most rewarding time in my career was when I was a commander. And I was a commander for 7 years, and getting to either help the young people do what they needed to do by listening and giving good guidance and getting rid of the obstacles, and then later enabling other commanders to do their job and just make amazing things happen. It was all-consuming, particularly as a wing commander. It was all-consuming, and I would never want to give that up. It was such an amazing time to, gosh, just to see people do amazing things, right? And help in that journey in some way towards really like unbelievable ends. You know what I mean? Your random Joe Cube public has no concept of the missions that we have to do in the military, and then that we go out and actually do them, right? And we get all the resources that we need, and we have these great people, and then off we go and do these amazing missions that most people can't even imagine. It was pretty awesome.
Craig, I think you and I are the only enlisted veterans on staff, so you bring a different perspective. Tell us a little of your story.
Okay, so I came in the Air Force as an ICBM missile maintainer. So I would go out into the missile fields 16 hours at a time, and we would remove the lower down stages of the missile out of the silo. Did that for a few years, and I became a missile maintainer where we worked on the reentry system. Instead of taking the down stages out of the silo, we would take the actual post-boost control section, missile guidance section, and the actual nuclear warhead itself off the missile first, drive in a convoy, take it off to back on base. After about 9 years of doing that, I became a quality assurance evaluator. So after 2 weeks of going to school and putting on staff sergeant, I was selected to be an evaluator, where in the missile career field world, it's read a step, do a step. It's all with tech data. You don't make any deviations. You read something, you do it, because nuclear surety, missile safety, bad things can happen when things blow up that magnitude. And just to say, Domino's did not come up with guaranteed delivery in 30 minutes or less, so the next one is free. That's the ICBM world. Guaranteed delivery in 30 minutes, so the next one is free. So when I was going out to the missile field, I would always be cooking on a little hibachi because it took so much time for the launcher closure to open or the B-plug to go down. And one of the security forces folks was like, "Hey, Craig, did you know about the career field being an enlisted aide?" And I was like, "I have no idea what it is." "Yeah, you work for a general officer, you go to their house, you do some dinner parties." And it intrigued me. And I was like, "Nah, don't worry about it." Well, after I finished being a quality assurance evaluator, they wanted me to go back to be a missile handling team chief. And I was like, I'm doing this for 9 years. I want to do something I like to do. I like to cook. So I cross-trained the special duty career field, became an enlisted aide, which was absolutely what an experience. And I can get into more detail as the questions come on through. But I worked for 8 different general officers in 17 years as an enlisted aide, 3 of which was the last 3 chief of staffs of the Air Force. I was able to do 2 deployments, one as a master sergeant as the NCOIC for KAOC protocol in Al Udeid, Qatar, and then one as a chief master sergeant for the Force Support Squadron, 380th Force Support Squadron at an undisclosed location in Southeast Asia. I came back from that deployment. It was a year long, and I worked in plans, programs, and policies for Chief Master Sergeant in the Air Force, and that's where CSAF number 21 kind of found me. We kind of connected, and I went back to my calling and became his senior enlisted aide, and that's how I retired. But as far as rewarding, you talk about rewarding. When I deployed for that 1 year, every 4 months you had a rotation of new airmen that would come through. We were the first time selected for guard to come through, and so when I first get there, your first 2 months, you have 2 months of the previous regime. They rotate out 2 months later. Then the 4 months, 6 months there, you have the guard. When they rotate out, you have 2 months of the next team coming in, and then I get to leave after my year, and the chief replacing me. But when the guard came on station, those of you who have heard about deploying and those who have deployed, what you do in 1 week's time is what's compared to what is done back on the States in about 3 months' time. Because it's 24/7, around the clock, failure is never an option, nose to the grindstone, get it done, get it done, get it done. And I love Guard to death, I love all of my airmen and guardians to death, but we're running at a pace that was so fast with 3 dining facilities, the lodging facility, Perisco, the fitness centers, even though we had to function as a force support squadron, the Guard just couldn't keep up because everything was computer-based. So we took a lot of time to, hey, how does this scenario work back in the States? Oh, well, this is what we did. Well, now apply it in this factor. And in about 3 or 4 weeks, it was amazing that how fast they caught on, and they were more adept and knowledgeable than the active duty that we had, because they were so much more interested. When active duty come out, oh, this is my 3rd deployment, man, I don't want to do this anymore. Guard come out, they wanted to learn. And then once they learned it, they were like, no stopping. And we had to actually put the reins on and pull them back. That was the most rewarding time for me in the Air Force, was having an opportunity to deploy for a year, but also working with the Guard that we thought was going to be one of my worst assignments, ended up being one of my best assignments.
That's awesome. I appreciate that. So everybody has different reasons for joining the military. A lot of them are deeply personal. Can you guys enlighten us a little bit? Why did you choose to join? Houston?
I joined for the challenge. So I was maybe similar to the gentleman up front. As a child, looked at those fighter jets and said, I want to fly one of those things. And then Top Gun came out, and I was actually upset because I was like, now there's going to be more competition because all these other people are going to watch this movie and want to do it too. But I joined for the challenge of being a fighter pilot. And then after about 10 years, as I talked about earlier, I stayed for the service. I stayed to continue to lead airmen and make a difference in following 9/11, as you discussed. There was a real purpose behind the service and what we were doing to defend our nation. So thanks.
Jen?
So I decided when I was 15 years old that I wanted to be an officer in the Air Force. And I actually didn't go active duty until I was 24. So it was 9 years to get me there. But the rationale behind it was that, like Amy mentioned, it's the family business. Both my parents had been in the Air Force, and I am I'm proud of both of them for different reasons. So my father was a retired Chief Master Sergeant, 29 years of service. And I think one of the most interesting things about him is that he was an immigrant and enlisted in the U.S. Air Force in 1954 when he was still a German citizen. And I never understood why my dad's naturalization paperwork was from Biloxi, Mississippi. But if you're in the Air Force, you know that's where he went to tech school. That's where Keesler Air Force Base is. And that's what he was doing when he became a U.S. citizen. But he had already signed his name on the dotted line and then proceeded to serve his adopted country for 29 years. So proud of that. Also very proud of my mother, because my mother was in the Air Force from 1959 to 1961. And what's most interesting about the situation with her, and I look to all the ladies out here for this, is she had to get out of the Air Force because let's see, in 1961, she married my dad, and they were like, oh, okay, well, you're married. You can get out. You want to get out? And she was like, no, I really love this. But then they had like a honeymoon baby. They had my sister, and then the Air Force said, oh yeah, no, you have to get out. You don't get to serve if you are a mother. And so she had to exit the service. And and this was so long ago, and again, the actual Air Force people will recognize this, that she left the service, and her rank at the time was an Airman second class. And the thing is that rank doesn't exist anymore. So that's how old that was in 1961 when she was discharged, when she was an Airman second class. So I come from two people in the military. They met in the military, and so I joke about the fact that I was born with a dog tag, with dog tags in my hand. Like there's not been a day in my life where I haven't had a military ID card. So I do feel like it is the family business, and it's been good. It's been righteous, but it was meandering from when I was 15 years old. I was convinced I was going to go to the Air Force Academy. It didn't work out for me. Then I was mad at the Air Force, but it was still the right thing for me, and I landed in ROTC and got commissioned, and then off I went. It was lovely.
So for me, I graduated high school when I was 17 years old. My high school was a vocational school, and I excelled in industrial sewing machine mechanics. Coming from Fall River, Massachusetts, it's very historic because of the sweatshops that everyone worked in. Everybody worked on piecework and putting clothes together. The opportunity came as a sophomore in high school to take the skills I was being taught and apply them in a part-time job. I tried it for 2 weeks, and I could fix the machine, but I couldn't speak Portuguese, and I didn't like the stress and the pressure. Went back to my instructor, and he was like, I get a job in a restaurant. And I was like, what? I'll get a job in a restaurant. So I started off as a busboy at 15 years old, graduated high school at 17. I was the kitchen manager and head chef at 18 years old. And when I was 19, the restaurant started to take a dive down. And I said, it's time for me to jump ship. And I took the ASVAB with my friend from high school. And we're going to go in as the buddy system. Both going to join the Air Force. Unfortunately, he didn't score high enough for the Air Force. He went to the Navy. Still keep in touch with him today. So I joined the Air Force, and I thought I was going to get something with food, but nope. Because of my mechanical background, I came in guaranteed missiles. That's why I joined. Yeah.
So I just share mine a little bit here because it's kind of similar, but also very different. Like I did not join out of a deep sense of patriotism at all. When I was young, very young, my parents told me, hey, it'd be cool if you went to college, but you're going to have to figure that out on your own. Neither of my parents had college degrees. My grandparents didn't have college degrees. So I literally enlisted because I wanted to go to college and I needed them to pay for it. And I actually think that is pretty typical. Like, I think that the patriotism and the service for a lot of people comes after. It doesn't take long to realize what an incredible community you just joined. Less than 2% of the country are eligible to serve. Even less than that actually do serve. And so it's really incredible to be part of something like that. And it's a really, really tight-knit community. So for me, that also came afterwards, but very strongly. So, okay. So Jen, you talked about this a little bit about coming from a military family. Did either of the other two of you, did you guys come from military backgrounds?
My father was a reservist in the Marine Corps for 20 years, and he was very by the book, very strict. Everything had its place, and if it wasn't there when he used it, you're in trouble. And that kind of grew on me a little bit, and I kind of want to be a little bit like that. So that's aside from the restaurant going down and seeing what my father had gone through, and he also was an architect for Raytheon at the time, and he could write exactly like a typewriter, and you could not tell which one was different. He was that good back in the day. That's kind of why I joined. I wanted to be a little bit like him, but he was kind of upset. I went to the Air Force, and that's why I joined as well.
I like the little nudges against the other services. So, obviously, one of the things that we do is not just support airmen and guardians, but their families as well. So, can you guys talk a little bit about? I mean, you guys all had long careers in the services. What it was like raising a family in the service? What are some of the challenges that you experienced, and how do you think that kind of parlays to what airmen and guardians are experiencing today? And family, by the way, is everybody has their own definition of family. So, Houston.
Okay, so I came from I'll call it a more traditional family where we had 3 kids, got married when we were 30, and my wife, after working for 8 years, decided to stay home and raise children. And so raised the kids, moved every 2 years, lived overseas for 11 years. So a lot of adjustments going on, but certainly no shortage of stress when it came to having to live overseas without family support. The most difficult year was easily my 1 year in Afghanistan. I decided to leave my family. This wasn't me, I got orders. But I left my family with a newborn, a 2-year-old, and a 4-year-old in a small town in Germany. And I wasn't part of a squadron. I had been working for the headquarters, so she had absolutely no support. And she will tell you that was certainly her most difficult year in the Air Force. But even though it was difficult for us, I think there are so many joint spouse families now in our active duty Air Force that it is, I think it's becoming untenable, actually. And I'm looking to see what the future holds for how the United States Air Force can square this corner of the evolving family unit in the United States becoming more incongruent with what is a traditional military life. Not every country's military has their individuals, their service members move every 2 years. For some folks, like in Japan, smaller country, they don't live overseas very much. They actually leave their family in one location, and then the service member geo-batches throughout their entire career. I don't know if everybody wants to do that, but what I'm saying is, what I've noticed over my career is that this incongruence with the family unit, as there's more joint spouse, as spouses are looking for careers, children are looking for more stability, there are some significant challenges ahead as we look at how do we support these families and allow service members to serve an entire career.
Yeah. So for me personally, I've never had children. I have been married once before, and both marriages for me have been joint spouse, although I really ratcheted up the difficulty when I married another colonel who was in the Army. And so now we had 2 services going on at the same time, which was, he ended up retiring so that we could stay together, because that's what ends up happening. Joint spouse, just like Houston is saying, is incredibly difficult. And now, as a person who's, again, has done it twice from early on, probably in the early, well, I got married in 2003. What happened then is nobody cared. I mean, nobody cared, right? Like, he's got to go there, you got to go there. And I mean, fingers crossed it all works out and you guys get to see each other. Nobody cared. And things in the meantime have changed inside the Air Force. I'm less familiar with how it is in the Space Force, but there are fewer options in the Space Force. But in the Air Force, how it has changed now is that in order to separate a joint spouse family, it has to take approval of a general officer in the chain of command, right? So you got to break some glass now, which is really good, because it's very challenging. Now, when you introduce other services, it's a whole mess. But what I will say is, I like what Amy said, that your family is your own definition of family, right? So as an example, I was on the special list for my best friend's children, where I could go pick up her kids at the base CDC if something happened, and have done it multiple times. So I was driving a Jeep at the time with no doors, but there was a car seat in the back to pick up her son, her 2-year-old. And so there are ways right? You end up, you make do. I think one of the things that that you really have to do when it comes to family, from my perspective, is you have to make the decision that like this is your life, and you're going to make the best of it while you can, right? And so, for example, the dining out with your spouse may end up being your date night. That may just be what it is this month, right? But you have fun with it and you go forward, and you do those kinds of things. You know, when you get stationed at Minot, North Dakota, or Malmstrom, Montana, you know, where you're far away from your family and far away from cities and places where you might want to be, you end up, you know, you make the best of it with the people that you have with you. And if you make that decision, it's truly not about what's around you. I swear to you so much, it's about people making the decision that they're gonna do the best they have in the situation that they're in, both with their friends, with their family, and then get after it. And granted, things are empirically hard and sometimes empirically easier, but it's such a mindset thing. And certainly as a commander, when not having children, that was one of the things that I had to do my level best to just ratchet up the empathy as best as I could to try and put myself in families in their shoes, because I was not living that life. I had not lived that life of having to work, having to get the kids through, having to deal with someone else's career all at the same time. So, but you have to do your best to understand where people are, because it gets very challenging. I mean, the best that I did, I'll be honest, is as the installation commander of the only active duty military base in the state of Montana, we worked so hard to make sure that we got in the law what we called licensure reciprocity. And what that meant was that all of our spouses who showed up as teachers or lawyers or nurses or something that would require a state-issued license, when I was a wing commander, there was no reciprocity. And what that meant is, I mean, literally this was happening. The schools are screaming because they're in a teacher shortage, and they're turning away our military spouses who are teachers, because right now they don't happen to have a Montana license that's current. They had a prior Montana license, but not one that's current. I mean, it was insanity. And so getting the right people together and getting in front of the legislature to get things in law, to try and do some tangible things, those were some of the best things that we could do. It did make a difference. We were really happy about that. It was a big deal at the time. But there you go, that's me.
So for me, yeah, being married, 2 girls, very difficult. Still married to my wife, 33 years, God bless her. If she didn't do the things that she did while I was on the road or being deployed or doing a dinner party for God knows how many people for such and such coming through, the hard thing that I want you all to picture. A young NCO, E5, changing career field for the first time. We lived in Cheyenne, Wyoming for 9 years, and now we got to move to Alaska. Kids don't want to go. Daughters don't want to go. They're playing soccer. They're doing really, really well. There's no soccer in Alaska. If there is, it's only, 2 months, 3 months, and then all snow and darkness. Wife couldn't transfer her job over, so she gets to Alaska. Nothing over there in Alaska for her to do. So what did we end up doing? She ended up doing daycare. You constantly, as a young E5, even E6, E7, depending upon your lifestyle, the spouse, if she doesn't have something to fall back on, it's pretty much one income, and it's tough. It's really tough, and that's a big struggle with now today. When I cross-trained to become an enlisted aide, the chief that had to write one of my packages called me in his office, and he said, "No, you got a great career going on in missiles. Why you want to do this?" And I was like, "Because I want to do something I enjoy doing." And he said to me, "You'll never make rank." And I said, "What?" He said, "You'll never make rank." He said, "There's only, 60 enlisted aides in the Air Force?" and it's very competitive, you'll never make rank. And where are you going to go work for? I said a 3-star. He was like, nope, if you work for a 4-star, you're nobody. And I was like, how do I do that? He said, well, you're going to stay in the career field for several years and get noticed, do something different. And if you continue to stay in that career field while you're struggling, you'll get noticed, and maybe one day you work for a 4-star. And I was like, am I doing the right thing or not? So we ended up PCSing, and when it come time to study for promotion testing, I got a dorm room, and I just studied. I took 2 weeks of leave. I would come home for dinner, sleep at the dorm, come back for breakfast, see the kids and everything. And that's all I did. When the results came out, they only promoted 5 people to tech sergeant. This guy was number 5. First thing I did, I called that Chief Master Sergeant up. Chief Klingensmith, Tony Klingensmith, I'll never forget him. Hey, Chief, this is Craig Duclos. Hey, Craig, how's it going out there? I was like, going good. I said, got some news for you. He was like, what you got? I said, remember you said I'll never see another stripe? He was like, yep. I said, well, you're wrong. I just made tech sergeant. Well, congratulations. And I was like, no, you said I would never make another stripe. He was like, nah, I just want to put a boot in your ass. That's all I wanted to do. He said, I knew you would make it. I was like, he said, I am chief, you know. I was like, you son of a gun. So yeah, the struggle is real. I mean, for the enlisted side, it really is with kids and growing up.
So I think Boots and Craig, you both kind of touched on this a little bit, but I'm just going to ask one more question. I want to give an opportunity for everyone to ask us questions if you have any. But when you think back on your service, what is an enduring lesson that comes to mind that can be applied to today's Airmen and Guardians, and also what we do here at AFA, our mission? What is something that you can pull from your experience to help everybody in the room understand why we're here and why it matters what we do? Who wants to go first? Craig?
Sure.
So, as a staff sergeant, I had the opportunity, I was selected to go to the NCO Academy in Colorado Springs. One of the guest speakers was Chief Master Sergeant number 5, Chief Gaylord. And something he said to us during his keynote speech was, your name is on the mailbox. And he said, you can take that many, many ways. But I want you to remember what you do in the Air Force should resonate with you throughout your career and through your family. Put your name on it. If no matter what you do, some jobs are gonna suck. Put your nose to the grindstone, suck it up, embrace the suck. But do it, and do it to the best of your ability. When you continue to put your name on the mailbox, people are gonna start noticing you. You know what? When the hard tasks come out, who are they gonna pick? Even if they don't know you, and if you did it behind the scenes, they know of you, they know you had your fingers on that. Put your name on the mailbox. And it's kind of what we do here in AFA. We always try to reach out to the Airmen and Guardian and see what they need. And how can we help them get what they acquire? I don't care if you're enlisted, officer, guard, reserve, it is one big family. And what we do, when I was asked to come work here, it was a no-brainer, because what we do is so important. Not just for the military, but the families. For me, it's so personal. I don't know if I'm beating around the bush here or whatever, but put your name on the mailbox and take pride in what you do. Professional results and daily efforts. That's all I can say.
That's great advice.
So I think similar to that, I think what's important for individuals as well as for organizations, ours included, is you got to look at what we're interested in. This is almost TED Talkish. You look at what you're interested in, and then you focus on what you can do something about, right? And I think that is, that's a great way to live. right? Stay concerned about the things that you can actually affect. Own what you can actually affect. And everything else may be interesting to you, but if you can't do anything about it, okay, we'll leave that over there and we're going to focus on what we can do things about. And I think that's good for people. I think that's good for organizations. There you go.
More good advice. Houston, over to you.
I want to share a quick war story. And so your Air Force and its airmen answered your nation's call after 9/11. And I know that we have a lot of young folks that weren't even around when 9/11 occurred. But I had the privilege of flying 100 combat missions over Afghanistan in the F-16. These missions were long, 4 to 5 hours. You would have to air-to-air refuel multiple times. And you had one objective, and that was to support the troops on the ground. Because we had tens of thousands of service members having a tough day. I mean, I was flying around at 25,000 feet, looking over the canopy rail. Afghanistan, by the way, is an absolutely beautiful country. It looks kind of like the Colorado Rockies on one half, and then the other half looks, well, a little more desert-like. Not quite as beautiful. But much of the country is quite beautiful. And on one of these missions, I got to fly in response in support of these troops on the ground. They are always looking for air support because they were always getting attacked indiscriminately, and random IED attacks, ambushes. And when they got ambushed, they wanted one thing, and that was air support as soon as possible. And so we had these JTACs that would be embedded in the ground forces, and they would contact us in the F-16s and go, Viper 2-1, we need you over here as soon as possible. And so on this particular day, we vectored 2 F-16s over the mountainous area of Afghanistan, and this JTAC is talking at 1,000 miles an hour going, I need your weapons, I need them as soon as possible, we are under heavy machine gun fire, we are taking casualties. And at that point, when you're an F-16 and you've got weapons hanging and you're about ready to employ, your blood pressure's going up, your heart's about to beat out of your chest, and you're like, I've got to get these weapons off as soon as possible. And so you're getting nervous, you got your wingman right on your wing, and when your wingman says, I'm bingo fuel and I'm leaving to go to the tanker, now you are all by yourself. So now single ship F-16 at 25,000 feet, I've got 2 laser guided bombs, I've got 2 GPS guided bombs. And after about 5 minutes of talking with the JTAC on the ground, he has given me coordinates of his position. He's given me coordinates of where the bad guy's position is. I'm looking over the canopy rail. He says there's trees, there's rivers. Well, you guys have all looked out the window of an airliner. There's a lot of trees and there's a lot of rivers when you're up at 25,000 feet. So we have this thing called a targeting pod that allows us to zoom in and see some very discrete features. And he does this very good job of telling me the river that he's talking about is going north-south, and the enemy is west of the river and he's east of the river. And I zoom that targeting pod in on this large rock formation that he says that's where they're embedded and they have a heavy machine gun. And I am 95% sure that I have the right location. You're never 100% sure, because if you were 100% sure, you took too long to get that bomb off. So I tell him Viper 2-1 is heading outbound. So I head out about 10 miles, I turn back in, I'm heading towards the target, go master arm, all these red lights come on in the cockpit saying you're about to release a weapon. And I'm waiting for the magic words. I'm waiting for Viper 2-1, cleared hot. He gives me the cleared hot call. I push the red button on the stick, and 2 GPS-guided weapons leave the aircraft. And now it's the longest 32 seconds of your life because you're like, did I do everything right? I didn't have a wingman checking everything that I was doing, but I'm pretty sure that everything I did was correct. And then you're waiting, you look in the targeting pod, and you see the explosion. And you're like, did I hit the target? Did I hit the good guys? You don't know until you hear on the radio, Viper 2-1, direct hit, direct hit. And I share that story not to tell you that Houston Cantwell is the greatest F-16 pilot, because in this room, they're probably up in the front row here. All right. I was a solid, average F-16 pilot. That day, I got the job done. But I want to share that with you because the team it takes There is no other Air Force that could take old F-16s here in the United States, ship those 8,000 miles away, defend a base in the middle of Afghanistan, and you've got security forces defending the base. You've got civil engineers making sure that that runway is ready. You've got hundreds of maintainers, young maintainers I talked about earlier, that are trained to keep that single engine running, which is very important for us single engine pilots. You've got the weapons folks. Had one weapons troop not done that bomb just right, that bomb would have gone off in some other direction. If our space folks had not kept that GPS constellation going exactly where those bombs needed to go, that bomb's going somewhere else. That bomb went exactly where it needed to go at the exact right time because of the thousands of airmen. When I would tell this story to all the cadets that I would go visit when I was the Home Center commander, I would say, even the doctors, I think about the doctors that allowed that bomb to hit. Because when I was a captain, I ruptured my Achilles tendon, totally snapped, 100%. I could not even walk, let alone fly an F-16. I was in northern Japan, and they told me, hey, there's a doctor here that can sew that thing up. I'm like, really? In northern Japan? Like, we're kind of far away from anybody. They're like, sure, he can do it. I'm like, all right, well, he did a great job. I was able to get back in the cockpit. But the teamwork that it takes to get that bomb on target was our Air Force answering the call after 9/11. And they did that for 20 years, defending the troops on the ground and taking terrorists out. And that's what we support here at AFA.
Yeah. Was a mic drop.
Yeah, I feel like I should drop the mic on that. That's the perfect story to encompass all three of our mission pillars. It is exactly why we do what we do. So thank you, Houston. I wanted to give you guys an opportunity to ask us questions. Are there any questions out there? Really? We answered all of them? I knew somebody had one.
So I'd like to hear a little more about what Amy did in the Air Force and what advice, how it's affected, how that service affected her path forward in life.
It's an interesting path because I was an aerial porter in the Air Force. I think I said earlier on that I joined because I wanted to pay for school. So I went to the recruiter. I knew I wanted to be a journalist. It was the only thing I ever wanted to do, like my entire life. And I didn't want to do public affairs in the military because I was like the dark side of journalism, you know, like I wanted to do something different. So I went to my recruiter and I said, what is the shortest possible tech school that I can go to? Because I want to get back to Ohio State. And he was like, an aerial porter is 5 weeks. I was like, cool, that's what I'm doing. So like, that's how I ended up being an aerial porter. If you guys don't know, an aerial porter, they're the ones that drive the big K-loaders up to the aircraft and load the airplanes. So we loaded pallets of equipment. We loaded troops. We also basically ran an airport. We ran the PAX terminal, so we would process the troops on and off of the airplanes. It was a really cool experience because it was like a whole different world. I didn't come from a military service. Like my grandparents both served, but they never talked about it. It just really wasn't a big part of their life. And so, like I said, when I found myself part of this community and, you know, I was like with all of these people from very diverse backgrounds and we all had a single purpose in mind. It was just a really cool experience. And I just did 6 years, which is a traditional like reservist enlistment. And then I got out and I continued my path towards journalism. But I never lost the respect that I gained while I was in the service. And then when I graduated, actually I worked for Tobias as like a youngin at Military Times. And one of the first things they said to me was, you speak military? And I was like, I don't know, I guess so. And that's how I ended up because like I at least understood some of the jargon. And it just sort of like became my career path. Like it's not what I set out to do, but it's something I'm very proud to be supporting to this day. Did I say that? Oh, no. No. Anything else? We got a question in the back.
Thank you for all your lessons learned. And on that track, is there anything you absolutely would have done different in terms of how you went through your careers in the military?
Done different.
I'll answer that first. For me, I joined the reserves because I was going back and forth between, and this is kind of pertinent right now, I was going back and forth between the Guard and the reserve. And I didn't want to join the Guard because the governor could call you up to serve like at any time. And I wanted to do the job that I enlisted for. I didn't want to do some random thing. That was kind of my thought process at the time. But it was actually really hard because I enlisted to pay for my college. But in the reserves, you had to pay up front and then the reserves reimbursed you. So like I still ended up working like 4 jobs because I had to make the payment up front to like get reimbursed. So I probably would have joined the Guard. And I also would have done public affairs and I probably would have stayed in longer because it was just a really cool community. I kind of wish I had served longer than 6 years.
Sorry, Stutz. Stutz had to hear this the other night, but so always listen to your mom. So growing up, I told you I had one goal in life. That was to get into the cockpit of a fighter jet and be a fighter pilot. And so there was no time for reading books. Absolutely no time. Working out, hanging out with friends, playing sports, that was what childhood was all about. Going into high school, my mom was a teacher. She said, Houston, for the love of Pete, would you please pick up a book and expand your mind? And I was like, Mom, just get off my back. There's no time for this. And in fact, I outsmarted my mom. I said, Mom, if I start reading books, my vision's going to go bad, and then my dreams of being a fighter pilot will be crushed. And she's like, son's got a point. So she totally stayed off. I went to pilot training, became a fighter pilot, go to combat. I think I'm somebody. 30 years old, I go to George Washington University for a master's degree, and we take classes like foreign policy, we're talking about economics, we're talking about ethics, and I always did pretty well in school, but now at age 30, I suddenly found myself not having a single thing to say and being the dumbest person in the room, in the corner going, how did I get to this position? You go, oh, my mom was right. I should have picked up a book in my first 30 years of life and expanded my mind. So from that point on, I said, if I want to have any input in these complex issues facing airmen, facing our world, facing whatever job I'm in outside of the cockpit of an F-16, I'm going to have to expand my mind. And then to add insult to injury, I started reading books, and I started reading like biographies of famous, successful people. And like the first chapter was always, I attribute my success to my voracious reading habits. I'm like, oh man, I got a long ways to go. Yeah. But so if I could go back and do it different, I'd tell all the cadets this, start reading books.
That's awesome. So I think I would just stick with what happened. There was a whole bunch of times throughout my career where I said, yeah, well, if the Air Force makes me blah, 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 I'm just going to get out, or I'm going to do this, or I'm going to whatever. And calmer heads prevailed. And so I'm happy that they did. And I'm happy that I stayed. I ended up going to F.E. Warren too. And that was one of them. Like, I will never do missiles. And I did though. And it led to other good things. So no, I don't know that I would change anything. It was all good.
Yeah, the only thing I would probably change is maybe join sooner, right from high school. Instead of, I felt like I lost 2 years doing 2 years in the restaurant, and it didn't do anything for me. That's the only thing I always look back on. Why did I stay out? I didn't get anything from it, and the restaurant ended up failing anyway. So yeah, I just wish I would have joined sooner.
All right, so thanks guys for doing this. Veterans Day is a cool opportunity for AFA to kind of think about the last piece of our mission pillar, or mission statement, which is to honor and respect our enduring heritage. When you look back at, your career and your evolution, before being in the military, while you're during your service, and then today, who's the hero in military heritage for you, and why?
Okay, so for me, I'll just go since there's a pause. For me, it's for sure my parents, and I know that seems trite, and I don't know, it seems trite, but it for sure was my parents. Listen, what my mother had to endure as a woman in the 50s in the military was inhumane. It was not cool, right? But she did it, and people like me, then we stood on her shoulders. There's no doubt. I mean, I had there were some untoward things that happened to me in my career, but things that I could generally handle. But nothing like what happened to my mom. And all she wanted to do was serve and be part of this amazing organization. And strictly because of her gender, it was held against her, right? And I just think that's really crappy. I just do. And people like me got to stand on her shoulders, and she endured what she did. And then, of course, it got just completely cut off because, heaven forbid, you become a mother. So that's thing one, my mom. And then my dad, let me tell you guys, wow, the things that my father did, and one day we'll have to, we'll have cocktails or something in the bar, but my father was one of the 5% of OSI, who during the Cold War, I actually grew up in Berlin, Germany in the 70s and 80s, and so it was an interesting life that I had as well as a child, yes, and my father was, he was senior enlisted advisor of a squadron that did electronics countermeasures, if anyone wants to dive into that. But in his spare time, he had gotten drafted to run OSI ops. It's a long story. The things that my father did were amazing. And to the day he died, he was a true patriot to his adopted country, which I just think is unbelievable. And especially in times like we're in, that we might find ourselves in now, veterans who serve, irrespective of where they started, the vast majority of our veterans who serve, there's something special going on there, that they gave up a short amount of time, a long amount of time, the sacrifices for their families. And there might be little things that they got. There might be a college degree, maybe a college degree for a kiddo, right? Something like that. But it's a whole life. Now it's a wonderful life. I've had a wonderful life. But it's a whole life that I have had to give up, and my family has had to give up an awful lot. And to do that for your adopted country, I think is unbelievable. And my father did it.
Can we go? Okay, so for me, I had the greatest opportunity of any airman working for the general officers that lead our great Air Force. Every one of them is great in their own right, and some of the accomplishments that they have done, but one stands out, and I keep in touch with him to this day. It's General Mark Welsh. When he came on board, and his philosophy was, every airman has a story. And it is so true that if you don't know the people around you and the people that work for you, and some of their trials, tribulations, and their successes, if you don't know what makes them tick or how to reward that person, that's a failure on your part as a supervisor. When he pinned my stripes on for chief, he said to me, it's no longer about you. It's about the airmen below you. How many airmen can you help in 24 hours? Every day, 365. That's what your job is as a chief enlisted leader. So yeah, Mark Welsh is one of the greatest people I ever known. And then he actually had a game that if you had a best friend or a good friend or someone you had your career with, even family, he says, it gives me 3 minutes with them and I will find something out about them that you don't know. And that inspired people to really get to know their people. And he would do it. And then years later, he would remember people's names and dates. And now I find out he's got a photographic memory. But yeah, Mark Welsh, the third.
Yeah, his speech at the Air Force Academy
Oh, yeah.
on leadership. Oh my gosh.
Look it up.
It's
Watch
like
it.
out of the movies.
Yeah.
And it's an unscripted, just off the cuff speech. And it's unbelievable.
Yeah.
I don't have one specific person that I sort of look up to, but for me, it's all of the women who have served before me and who serve today. I think Jen and Heather are just prime examples of like the badass women who serve in our military, and I really look up to them. They just want to be treated like anybody else, and one thing that I really respect about the Air Force is in many cases they are. The Air Force was one of the first to integrate women into combat, and they were just kind of like a groundbreaker service of, like, let's just get the job done and who cares what your gender is, and the best people are what we need. And so for me, that's always been really important to me and has carried some life lessons beyond just the service of the type of like resilience and strength and independence and determination that I really respect and admire.
One quick comment. Sadly, we're about to lose the last of our World War II veterans, obviously just out of age. I had the honor of meeting one of them when I was at Air Command and Staff College. I got to interview Brigadier General Tex Hill. He was a triple ace in China flying for the Chenault Flying Tigers. And there was a man who had given so much and had seen so much. And we forget, being jet jockeys, how dangerous aviation still is, but how unbelievably dangerous it was back in the 30s and 40s, where you were strapping on machines that, I mean, those engines may or may not make it even through the mission. They were made out of cloth and wood, and you were doing things and people were shooting at you. It was an unbelievably dangerous thing that they were doing. When I was interviewing General Hill in his dining room, I wanted to ask him about these new unmanned aircraft, because these new UAVs were like the big, the rage, and there was a combat-proven fighter pilot that was proud of his Air Force heritage. And I was like, hey, General Hill, what do you think of all these new UAVs? And I thought I knew what he was going to say, but he looks up at me and he goes, he was 92 years old. He goes, Houston, I think they're great. They're going to save a lot of lives. And I was like, I never expected, scarf in the wind kind of guy, but we forget he saw his friends get killed literally at the end of the runway. He saw his friends get shot out of the sky while they're attacking the Japanese. And we have had such an advantage over our adversaries over the last 10, 20 years, but that is not always the case, and nor will it be in the future. And so it was a stark reminder of how horrible combat can actually be.
So with that, I think we're going to wrap it up. I would just encourage everybody to, if you have more questions, ask any of the veterans on staff. I mean, we're all happy to talk and answer questions, but it's really so important for us to truly understand who it is that we're supporting and why. It just makes the job that much more meaningful, because what we're doing really matters. And so if there's anything that we can do to kind of help you guys understand that, I think any of us would happily answer any questions. So that's it.